What's the difference between wealth and greatness? With wealth, there are many things that you can buy. But with greatness, you have many things which no money can buy, no thief can steal, and no fire can burn. So while it's good and comfortable to be wealthy, it's even much better and it's much harder to attain to achieve greatness. If you look in the streets today, you can see people driving expensive cars. And sometimes when you look into the cars, you see a very young person and you feel quite sure that the car that he or she is driving is not paid for by money that he or she made. Most likely, he happens to be born with a silver spoon, and to get that money that is brought down from the parents. That shows you wealth, but that doesn't show you greatness. For greatness, you have achieved something that will outlast your whole lifetime. In one of my previous videos, I featured Tan Sri Lobun Siu, who was a rags to riches story, and that is an example of greatness. For even though he has passed away 30 years ago, we still remember him today. With greatness, people will always remember you. And in today's video, we are going to feature one more person who has also achieved much greatness, and you can say that he began the path that is then followed by Tan Sri Lobun Siu. And the person that we are going to feature today is none other than Yeap Chor Ee, who also started penniless with nothing, and he built a great empire that is still here today. But we can also remember of his greatness, which is his support for education, and that is something which countless Malaysians, particularly Penangites, are enjoying today. And what he has put together is something which no money can buy, no thief can steal, and no fire can burn. And so today is my great privilege to do this video to celebrate who is Yeap Chor Ee. Prologue: From barber to banker. How does a penniless immigrant become one of the most respected and influential figures in Penang's history? This is the story of Yeap Chor Ee, a man who arrived on the island with almost nothing, began as a barber, and rose to become a banker, philanthropist, and legend. When we think of the great names that shaped Penang's destiny, people like Khoo Thian Teck, Chia Teck Soon, and Chung Keng Kwee, we often imagine wealth inherited or status conferred. But Yeap Chor Ee's path was entirely self-made. He came with hope, diligence, and an unwavering sense of moral responsibility. His success was not built on luck or privilege, but on trust, honesty, and sheer perseverance. As we explore his life, we'll uncover not only how he built his fortune, but also how he gave it back, founding schools, supporting charities, and shaping generations of Penangites. In many ways, Yeap Chor Ee embodied the Confucian ideals of Jin Zhi, the virtuous gentleman who seeks success not for self-glory, but for the betterment of society. Chapter 1: A Boy from Nan'an. Yeap Chor Ee was born in 1867 in Nan'an, Fujian Province, China. Nan'an, a town near Quanzhou, was home to many Hokkiens who would later migrate to Southeast Asia. The 19th century was a difficult time in Fujian. Population pressure, economic hardship, and the aftershocks of the Taiping Rebellion pushed countless families into poverty. Like many of his generation, The young Chor Ee grew up hearing tales of Nanyang, the southern seas, where opportunity awaited the brave. His family was poor, but he was taught the traditional virtues of thrift, philanthropy, and hard work. By his teenage years, Chor Ee made a life-changing decision. He would leave his home in Fujian, cross the seas, and try his luck in Penang, one of the busiest ports in British Malaya, already bustling with traders, planters, and immigrants. It was not an easy journey. Ships were crowded, storms frequent, and disease common. Yet, when he stepped onto the pier at Georgetown, perhaps around the 1880s, Yeap Chor Ee carried with him the one thing more valuable than money: determination. Chapter 2: The Wealthy Street Barber. In Penang, opportunities were few for a newcomer without capital or connections. So Yeap Chor Ee did what many poor immigrants did. He became a barber. He was an itinerant barber, plying his trade along the wealthy area, with the majority of his clients being the coolies and newly arrived immigrants. But his sharp eye and sharp mind made him more than a mere barber. As he cut hair, he listened to talk of trade, shipping, and business. Every conversation was a lesson. He lived simply, saving every cent. He slept where he could, ate frugally, and worked tirelessly. Over time, customers began to trust him not just for their grooming, but with their small savings and financial needs. In a society where many Chinese immigrants distrusted European banks, someone like Yeap Chor Ee, honest, reliable, and community-minded, became a safe person to turn to. It was from these humble beginnings that he began his journey toward becoming a financier. Sometimes, when we walk along Beach Street today, lined with old banks and shophouses, we forget that one of Penang's greatest bankers started right there with a pair of scissors and a comb. Chapter 3: The First Ventures. From cutting hair to counting money, Yeap's transition was gradual but deliberate. He began lending small sums to merchants and traders, often those he knew personally. He kept careful records, was fair in his dealings, and charged modest interest. Soon, he had enough capital to invest in small trading ventures. First, he set up a provision shop called Chop Ban Hin Lee, and then went on to trade in sugar and rice. He bought and sold goods, dabbled in property, and lent to tin miners. His reputation grew quickly, a man who was prudent, honest, and always fulfilled his word. By the early 1900s, Yeap Chor Ee had become known as a trusted private banker among the Chinese community. His modest office on Beach Street saw a steady stream of clients, from small shopkeepers to prominent households. But Yeap never forgot his roots. Despite his growing success, he continued to live simply, often wearing plain clothing and traveling by trishaw instead of carriage. In his quiet ways, he was building not just wealth but credibility, the kind of trust that no advertisement could buy. Chapter 4: Founding Ban Hin Lee Bank. In 1918, after decades of careful work, Yeap Chor Ee founded the Ban Hin Lee Bank to offer loans to his clients. By then, he was already a land proprietor, owning several pieces of real estate in the Chinese quarters of the business district. The name Ban Hin Lee reflected his philosophy. Ban Hin Lee means 10,000 prosperities standing firm, a wish for enduring success through virtue and diligence. A wish for enduring success through virtue and diligence. The bank served the needs of Penang's Chinese business community, especially those who found British banks too formal and inaccessible. It offered not just loans and deposits, but also understanding a personal relationship that bridged the gap between trust and finance. Ban Hin Lee Bank quickly became one of the island's most respected institutions. Its headquarters on Beach Street stood as a symbol of Chinese enterprise and resilience. Through this bank, Yeap helped countless entrepreneurs build their own businesses, shaping Penang's economy from the ground up. In his lifetime, Ban Hin Lee Bank was more than a financial entity. It was a community pillar, a reflection of the values that had guided Yeap from his barber days: honesty, hard work, and service. Chapter 5: Building a Business Empire. By the 1920s and 1930s, Yeap Chor Ee's influence extended far beyond banking. His business interests included tin mining, plantations, real estate, and trading. He became one of the wealthiest men in northern Malaya, yet remained remarkably humble. His philosophy was clear: wealth must be managed with prudence and reinvested in society. He avoided speculation, preferring solid productive ventures that created jobs and stability. He was also a skilled judge of people, often supporting those he saw as hardworking and sincere, even if they had little collateral. Many future business leaders of Penang got their first start with loans and mentorship from him. Yeap's empire grew steadily, but never ostentatiously. His life was a study of moderation, proof that true success lies not in display, but in discipline. Chapter 6: The Man Behind the Money. Who was Yeap Chor Ee, the man behind the empire? By all accounts, he was gentle, modest, and deeply moral. He avoided publicity and lived simply in his grand mansion on Northam Road, today home to the Wawasan Open University. He spoke softly, dressed plainly, and was known for his humility. Despite his immense fortune, he preferred a simple diet and lived without luxury. He was guided by Confucian values: loyalty, integrity, and benevolence. His employees respected him not out of fear but admiration. Many called him Tau Ke Yap, but to them he was also a father figure. When I think about Yeap Chor Ee, I'm reminded of a timeless Penang value: that true greatness is quiet, and true wealth is not measured in gold, but in goodwill. Chapter 7: Philanthropy and Education. If there was one area where Yeap Chor Ee's heart truly lay, it was education. He believed that wealth was meaningless unless it benefited the next generation. Throughout his life, Yeap funded schools, scholarships, and educational institutions that shaped Penang's Chinese community. He contributed to Chonghua Confucian School, Hanchang School, Pote School, and Zhongshan Primary School, to name some, and other institutions that blended Chinese and Western learning. Here, I must also mention his immense donation to the University of Malaya, totaling $250,000, making him the single biggest individual donor in those days. He saw education as the bridge between tradition and modernity, the key to ensuring that Penang's Chinese youth could thrive in a changing colonial world. Yeap's generosity was quiet but far-reaching. He never sought public recognition for his donations. To him, philanthropy was not about fame, but duty. In the context of Penang society at the time, where communal schools relied heavily on private donors, Yeap's contributions were nothing short of transformative. His giving spirit also extended to hospitals, charities, and cultural associations. When I look at Penang today, with its strong education foundations, I often think how much of this legacy began with men like Yeap Chor Ee, who believed that knowledge is the truest form of wealth. Chapter 8: A Patron of Culture and Values. Beyond his economic and educational achievements, Yeap Chor Ee was a staunch patron of Chinese culture and values. He upheld Confucian principles of morality, discipline, and filial piety at a time when many immigrants were struggling to find their cultural footing in a foreign land. He supported Chinese temples, clan associations, and community projects that preserved the cultural fabric of Penang. These institutions were not only spiritual sanctuaries but also centers of social organization, places where Chinese identity could be nurtured and passed down. Yeap also encouraged the study of classical Chinese texts and believed that moral education must accompany modern progress. He saw material wealth as fleeting but virtue as eternal. It's easy to forget that during Yeap's lifetime, Penang's Chinese community was in constant negotiation with British colonial influence and Western ideas. Yet Yeap stood firm in believing that modern success could coexist with traditional virtue. In his life, we see not a man caught between two worlds, but one who harmonized them, a bridge between the East and the West, the old and the new. Chapter 9: The War Years. When the Japanese invaded Malaya in 1941, everything changed. Businesses closed, supplies vanished, and fear spread across Penang. For Yeap Chor Ee, these were the darkest years. The Japanese occupation tested not only his finances but his moral strength. Like many prominent businessmen, he faced constant pressure from the occupying forces who sought to control commerce and extract resources. Records of his wartime activities were sparse, partly because Yeap himself kept a low profile and partly because modesty was his nature. But local oral histories suggest that he continued to support the community discreetly, helping families in distress when few others could. He lost much during those years in business, in peace, and in health, but he never lost his sense of humanity. When the war finally ended in 1945, Yeap was already nearing 80, yet his resolve to rebuild Penang was as strong as ever. Sometimes it's the silence of people like Yeap Chor Ee that we find the loudest examples of courage. Chapter 10: Rebuilding After the War. After the war, Penang lay scarred but not defeated. Businesses reopened, schools revived, and people began the slow process of recovery. Yeap Chor Ee played a quiet but pivotal role in this rebuilding. He provided capital to restart enterprises, supported social relief efforts, and renewed his commitment to education and culture. He could have chosen to retire and enjoy the fruits of his labor, but instead he saw it as his duty to restore the prosperity and dignity of the community. It was during these post-war years that Yeap's reputation as a pillar of Penang society was most deeply cemented. His name inspired trust, his word carried weight, and his actions reflected compassion. Today, when we talk about nation building or community development, we often think of government initiatives. But long before such terms became fashionable, people like Yeap were already doing it, quietly, effectively, and with heart. What do you think made figures like Yeap Chor Ee so trusted and respected in their time? Was it their success, their values, or something deeper? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Yeap Chor Ee's legacy did not end with him. He raised his family to continue his work, instilling in his sons the same values of integrity and service that defined his life. Under his guidance, the bank grew and modernized, serving Penang for many more decades. The Yeap family continued to be deeply involved in community affairs, maintaining their tradition of philanthropy and civic responsibility. Ban Hin Lee Bank eventually became part of Malaysia's financial history, a reminder of how one man's vision could endure across generations. What makes Yeap's story so powerful is not just that he built wealth, but that he built continuity, a sense of moral inheritance that outlived him. In an age when fortunes often come and go, Yeap's family stood as living proof that when values are passed down, prosperity follows naturally. Chapter 12: The Final Years of a Great Man. In his later years, Yeap Chor Ee remained active but reflective. By the late 1940s, his health began to decline, yet he continued to guide his businesses and offer advice to younger entrepreneurs. He passed away in 1952 at the age of 85. His funeral was one of the most solemn and well attended in Penang's history, with thousands paying their respects. The newspapers of the day described him as a man of rare integrity and benevolence. For many, his death marked the end of an era, the passing of a generation that had built Penang from the ground up. Even decades later, his name still evokes respect. Buildings he financed, schools he supported, and values he embodied continue to shape the city's character. Have you or your family ever had any connection with Ban Hin Lee Bank or the Yeap family? I'd love to hear your memories or stories about how their legacy touched Penang life. Epilogue: The Spirit of Yeap Chor Ee. Today, the former mansion of Yeap Chor Ee still stands proudly along Northam Road, now part of Wawasan Open University, a fitting symbol to his enduring dedication to education. His story is more than history, it's a lesson of perseverance, humility, and purpose. From being a barber on Welkie to the boardroom of Ban Hin Lee Bank, Yeap's journey reminds us that greatness begins with character, not circumstance. As Penang continues to evolve with skyscrapers, startups, and global ambitions, we would do well to remember pioneers like Yeap Chor Ee, who built not just businesses but communities. He showed that success means little unless it uplifts others. His wealth was a tool, his life a testament, and his legacy a bridge between tradition and modern progress. For me, Yeap Chor Ee's story captures the very essence of Penang: resilient, compassionate, and quietly extraordinary. So, the next time you walk down Beach Street or pass by that old mansion by the sea, remember the man who once lived there, the humble barber who became one of Penang's greatest sons.